Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk about something that many of you have been inquiring about, and that is, where are we headed? And the way that I really do look at where we're headed in terms of world affairs is there's three things that I look at for sure. That is the country's chart, that is the transits as to where they're headed, and the other thing that's vitally important to remember is to always look at the leader's chart. Throughout time, I have always looked at the president's charts for different countries in order to understand what will be happening in the future for that country. Now, there are a lot of dire things that I'm seeing coming about. So hopefully with these pre-warnings, we can avert some of the problems that are coming. But probably with the likelihood of where the consciousness is on planet Earth right now, looks like something big is going to explode. And of course, from that vantage point, that's really where people begin to change, because people don't change unless they have to. Generally, that is for the norm of the mass society of people that are unaware. They don't change until they have to. And this looks like they're going to have to. Now, I want to remind everyone, if you would like to receive my free newsletter, I just wrote extensive details about what is coming. And you can get that free newsletter by going to my website, galacticcenter.org, sign up for my free newsletter. There you're going to be getting my predictions month by month, exactly what to expect and how to prepare. So looking at this, I want you to know I'm going to bring up both the charts of President Joe Biden and the United States chart, and I'm going to take you step by step as to what I'm seeing so you can better understand what's happening and why. You know, astrology is a tool for self-betterment and understanding, and that's where we have to go with this. So aside from any political views, we have to look at the charts objectively to see what is going on, so possibly some things could be averted. So putting up President Biden's chart here with the United States chart, we're going to get some answers. So looking at Joe Biden's chart, what I think is so interesting is the eclipses are falling across his sun and his first house. The sun is the individual, and the first house is the individual as well. So much is happening in his chart that's relative to what is going on in the United States and affecting the world, I must say. So looking at that, putting the transits across his chart, you're going to see many things are happening, and that's why you see things daily on the news happening. Well, first of all, I've been talking about that Uranus being around 18 to 20 degrees of Aries. Now, Uranus is a very powerful planet, and it creates change and disruption. And Mars has been squaring Uranus for a while during the summer months. Then Saturn and Uranus have been in a square aspect that I've been talking about for quite some time. This square aspect is so important in terms of what's to come. Major shifts, breakdowns, changes, transformational changes. Yes, it's all here. Even the fact that Pluto, for the United States chart, is making a return from where it was at the birth of the country. It takes that long to go through all 12 signs. So that was from 1776 to now. Pluto is finally making its return. And that represents radical change, radical shifts you're going to see. But going back to President Biden's chart, looking at where his sun sits at 4 degrees of Scorpio, realize that in November, the lunar eclipse happens at 3 degrees of Taurus. And most importantly, K2 is crossing over the sun. When I see K2 crossing over a planet, it means the loss of something, letting go. And the sun is the physical body. K2 crossing over the sun means he's weakening. His physical constitution is weakening. And by the end of the year, while both the solar and lunar eclipse have struck through his 1st and 7th house, I don't know if he'll be able to finish his term, because December looks so stressful, and so does January. So I'm looking at Mars as well, because the transit of Mars, as it comes across the eclipse points that happen in November and December, transiting Mars will cross over the point where the lunar eclipse is, as well as the solar eclipse. And the lunar eclipse happens November, towards the end of November. And then we're looking at the solar eclipse that will happen around December 4th. Very, very prominent times. So let me back up a little bit and let me show you what's going on, because October, first of all, September 18th, the soonest transit we have here, K2 will be on Biden's ascendant. This is always a change, but let me remind everyone, we don't need these aspects to be exact. When they get close, within 2, 3, 4 degrees of a point, events start happening. So right now as we speak, not just September 18th, we have K2 on his ascendant. And that means you're not connected to the world. It does. Not connected to the world. Remember, these nodes take 18 and a half years to go through all 12 signs. So the last time that K2 was on his ascendant was 18 and a half years ago. This is a long-standing major result transit. Now by October 12th, Uranus is going to oppose Mars. It's been opposing Mars for a long time, while Saturn has been squaring it. This whole year, incredibly stressful. His Mars sits in the 12th house, which deals with foreign lands and countries. And it rules his 6th house, which deals with enemies and attacks. And that has been essentially what's been happening to the country. Because you see, you can look at someone's chart when they're president as to how the country will be affected. It's their chart that can prove this out. Furthermore, let me just say, if we're to look at it as his chart as an individual, the 6th house is his health and accidents. And for transiting Uranus, which is sudden unexpected events, to be opposing his natal Mars on and off throughout this year, but the last heavy go-round will be in October and the end of the year, December through November through January. Look out. This is going to be a crucial and critical time period for him and the United States and the world. So moving on, I also noticed that the transit of Mars, when it comes into Scorpio, which will be around November, it's going to start to aspect Well, first it'll aspect his natal Mars and Mercury. That will be November 19th and December 2nd, while Mars is still in Libra. And Mars and Mercury being in the 12th house, hidden agendas, foreign countries, attacks. That's what I'm seeing. Now, as Mars comes into Scorpio, things heat up, and this is in the month of December. Very, very heavy. So I'm looking at another thing is that his Saturn, his natal Saturn, sits at 17 degrees of Taurus, while the solar eclipse will happen at 18 degrees of Scorpio. So his Saturn 16 degrees 53 minutes, essentially 17 degrees of Taurus, then you're going to see that the eclipse point at 18 degrees is exactly within 1.5 degrees of his Saturn. Now his Saturn rules the 4th house, which represents the homeland. This is difficult. Attacks on the homeland. And not only that, transiting Saturn will be squaring his Mars again, and that's going to be the last and the most intense square of all. And this happens January 16th to be exact. But remember, it doesn't have to be exact to create an event. So we're in hot water between December and January based on Biden's chart. Even Pluto on January 10th will be opposing his Jupiter. I mean, there is so much going on that represents what we're about to face. And it's starting in August, continues on through January. One event after another is due to happen. And even by December 2nd, when Mars will transit, well, Mars will be still in Libra. But let me just say, okay, November 2nd, Mars is going to be quincunx his moon. It's going to have rolled into the sign where it is aspecting the moon exactly. So his natal moon sits in the 6th house. It is in Aries, and this can be dramatic. But I think when Mars crosses over his sun is going to be the most dramatic. And that's going to take place in December. Okay, so this eclipse looks very, very difficult. One more thing I might add, looking at January, that's going to be when transiting Jupiter, January 4th to be exact, will cross over his K2 in the 4th house. And Jupiter on K2 can be big losses. I've seen it produce these effects before. And let me point out that his K2 being in Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. Saturn sits in the 7th house of opponents, so big losses from opponents. And don't forget this, now let's go to the United States chart, because transiting Jupiter will cross over the natal moon. If you'll notice, President Biden's K2 sits at 7 degrees of Aquarius, and so does the natal moon on the United States chart. So K2 is what? Losses. It sits on the moon for the United States. This can indicate great losses, in due part with President Biden. Furthermore, if you'll look in the United States chart, the 3rd house is where the moon sits. What does that mean? The 3rd house deals with communications and the media, and this will reveal many of the truths that have been kept from us with the media. This is where it's all coming out. Events like this don't lie. But one thing I do want to point out is this solar eclipse that happens at 18 degrees of Scorpio sits exactly opposed Uranus in the United States chart at 18 degrees of Taurus. Uranus is sudden, unexpected events, and the sixth house deals specifically with accidents and enemies. And transiting Mars, when it crosses over that eclipse degree, 18 degrees of Scorpio, that's going to be around December 30th and December 31st of this year. So New Year's Eve may be a big surprise. When transiting Mars crosses over the eclipse degree at 18 degrees of Scorpio, it is opposed Uranus in the chart of the United States. And furthermore, the whole time that transiting Mars is crossing over these critical degrees, when it comes together with K2, which will be December 16th, transiting K2 and Mars will conjoin in the heavens at 7 degrees of Scorpio. And that's violence, always violence. It's actually terrorist attacks is what it means. Don't forget, from the beginning of the year in January of 2021, I said this would be the year of war. No one believed me when I wrote that article. You'll see. But moving on, as the transit of Mars sits at 7 degrees, when it sits at 7 degrees of Scorpio, then that's going to be also where it's going to be aspecting the natal moon in the United States chart. And what is that? That is also K2 in the chart of President Biden. So the transiting Mars is going to activate both the natal moon in K2, natal moon in the United States chart, and natal K2 and Biden's chart. Moving forward, remember Mars special aspects. Mars special aspects are 4 and 8. And the eighth aspect that Mars forms is actually a quincunx in Western astrology. So it is a 6-8, 8-6 relationship, and it deals with 8th house energy and 6th house energy. 8th house meaning the house of death and change and transformation, whereas the 6th house is the house of accidents and enemies. And if you'll look, while Mars transits through the sign of Scorpio in December and January, it will be aspecting all 4 planets there in the 7th house in the United States chart. First, natal Mars, then Venus, Jupiter, and most importantly, the Sun. The Sun does represent our leaders. Now, another thing that's revving up this current time period is that when Mars is with the Sun in Virgo, which will be basically from September 5th or 6th till October 22nd. This is when transiting Mars and the Sun will be in the 10th house of the United States chart. This doesn't look good for the leader, the president of the United States chart. Why? Because the 10th house in the house of the United States represents that. And that's where Saturn sits. And as transiting Mars crosses over Saturn, around October 8th through the 12th, watch for some major things when Mars gets close to that natal Saturn. The Sun and Mars will conjoin October 8th around 21 degrees of Virgo. And Saturn sits there at 24 degrees of Virgo. So you're going to see a lot of people very upset with the president and the United States. And I think that's already occurring. But just to give a little recap here, based on the chart of President Biden and on the chart of the United States, there are so many things that are going to come. It's going to get really, really intense, as I keep calling it, the grand finale. Because all of the aspects that have been building, the square of Saturn and Uranus, the transit of Mars, and most of all, the eclipses. This is where everything comes to its final degree point of a hit that will change the world as we know it today. So it is time to prepare. It is time to take care of ourselves. It is time to go within and to start our spiritual practices, because if you wait, it's going to be too late. We have to be mentally prepared. We'll all get through this when we follow our path, our destiny. We'll all get through it, as we have through all the other difficult times that planet Earth has been through. But I want to say this. This has been brewing, this has been building, and as it comes to pass, we will have a better world. I can reassure you that. So thank you for listening. And remember, if you want to learn more about me, sign up for a reading. Go to my website, which is galacticcenter.org. While you're there, don't forget to check out my spiritual jewelry. I sell prayer malas and things that remind us of our spiritual purpose. But most of all, if you want to understand how I do what I do with astrology, learn Vedic astrology, check out my university website, which is universityofvedicastrology.com. Thank you.